Welcome to Coffee with a Journalist, a podcast featuring the tech industry's most well-known tech journalists. We uncover the real person behind the real stories you love to read. We discuss their beat and news coverage, what their inbox looks like, and a whole lot more. I'm Jared Martin, the co-founder and chief operations officer at OnePitch. Our host for the show is Beck Bamberger, the co-founder of OnePitch, CEO of BAM Communications, and a current journalist. On today's show, we're joined by Sara Jerde, publishing editor at Adweek. Sara tells us all about her favorite mammal, the recent shift of news stories at Adweek surrounding coronavirus, her favorite bedtime reads, and lots more. Let's dive into today's episode right now.
Hey everyone, today on Coffee with the Journalist, we have Sara Jerde from Adweek talking to us. So excited to have you on the show, Sara, and actually to dig into particularly your role, which is a little bit different probably than what we have with regular reporters, journalists, because you're the publishing editor over at Adweek, coming in from New York City, by the way.
Hey, how you doing? Thanks for having me so much.
Yes. So we're going to dig into, stories and what you think journalism is going, especially for the beats you cover. But first, can we please speak about your fondness of hippos, which is on your Twitter page?
Well, how much time do we have?
Well, usually this is half an hour, but let's just start for a few minutes. I mean, where do you get a fondness for hippos? I'm sure there's a story.
There is actually. So when I was a little kid, I'm from the Cleveland area, and my sister and I went to the zoo, and there was this really big hippo exhibit at the time, and that hippo has since passed away. But I dropped my sister's hat in the exhibit, and it was this big ordeal, and we had to alert everyone to go get the hat. But somehow that has grown into a love of hippos. And I just love that their ears twitch to get the water out, and they don't actually swim despite them being in the water all the time. I mean, I've got a lot of fun facts geared up. So,
wait. You mean they don't swim? They just kind of bounce, I guess?
Yeah, they just bounce and they just walk along the bottom of the water. Yeah. And then bounce back up when they need air.
Wow. How old were you when you had that hippo incident with the hat?
Oh my gosh, I must have been around 7 and my sister was 5. So it was a long time ago.
Oh, wow. So deep childhood memory.
Seriously. But, if you ever have any pictures of hippos, particularly baby ones, feel free to send them my way.
Oh, they are cute. Okay, good. Now, do you still get to visit hippos? You're in New York City. So I don't know. Do they have hippos in New York at the zoo there?
Central Park, definitely not. I think maybe at the Bronx Zoo, but I haven't seen them.
Yeah. Oh, well, I hope you see hippos soon.
Thank you.
Even in the wild, maybe sometime. I've seen them in the wild. It's crazy.
You have?
Crazy. Yes. In a safari in Kenya. And I'm not talking one hippo. I'm talking herd of hippos.
Holy mackerel. Was it terrifying?
Not terrifying. The most interesting thing about safaris, and that is quite an incredible thing to ever do, is that it really is like the Lion King. Animals are everywhere, and you are the one in the cage, like the car or whatever fenced in resort you're in or whatever. Everything else is just free roaming, and there's everything from the crocodile next to the hippo, next to the cranes, next to the antelope, next to the giraffe. I mean, it is all together. It's not like you're like, oh, let me get my binoculars out to really see and try to find. No, it's just they're all out there. It's incredible. So hopefully one day, Sara, you can see hippos in the wild, if not in a zoo. I mean, I'm sure you would take that too.
Yes, I would absolutely love to. I'll keep you posted.
Yes, they do have quite the hippo exhibit in the San Diego Zoo. And I think they just had a baby. So let's talk about Adweek. Let's talk about that. Tell me first about, just for education for everybody, what's the publishing editor role entail?
Yeah, so I, at Adweek, have been covering the media industry now for about a year and a half. And I still do that in my role, particularly covering, the business models of publishers and how they're diversifying revenue streams. But I've been moved into this more elevated position where I'm also overseeing our political coverage.
Yeah, for 2020, presidential race. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, exactly. So it really is entailing that. So doing some editing of folks who are writing about the media beat, and I take sort of higher, more holistic look at what's happening in the media industry, as well as overseeing our 2020 stuff.
What do you think is happening in the media industry right now? I mean, obviously we're in the midst of this pandemic, but what are your thoughts?
Yeah, it's such an interesting time to be covering media. I mean, it always is, but it is incredible to see how quickly, COVID-19 has really affected business models. And it's really kind of a shame too, because I had been covering so much about how media has tried to diversify revenue streams, particularly as they get into events and try to move away from the reliance on advertising. And we're really seeing, even though we're now, I guess it's like week 5 of it really taking hold here in the US, but what it has done to digital advertising budgets. And, of course, we can't hang out in person anymore. So it's completely obliterated their events businesses. So it's yet another challenging time to be in the media industry. And it's really been we're getting to that point now in the coverage where dark and kind of grim things are starting to happen. We're starting to see layoffs and pay cuts. So hopefully we're able to all make this out alive. Hopefully we all see the market recover as quickly as it kind of dried up.
What about making a story? So we always like to cover, how do you craft an actual story from the idea to hitting the publishing button?
Yeah, I because I cover media, and I try to listen to as many podcasts and read as much as I possibly can. I do a lot of that on the subway on the way into work. I commute from Brooklyn to Manhattan, so I've got a good chunk of time to kind of just sit there and consume. In that downtime, I'm really thinking about how I'm consuming media and what my consumption behaviors really look like. And if there's interesting journalism that's being done or interesting journalism coming from the trade publication perspective, we want to cover those fascinating ad campaigns and really put a spotlight, especially too, on just sort of the innovative work that can be done in this industry. And especially, I'm optimistic about where the industry is going, and even we're in this crisis that is COVID-19, but it's going to create and force media companies to really think quickly and think innovatively about where the industry is moving. So I'm really fortunate and lucky to be kind of at the forefront of seeing what that looks like, and hopefully it means some good things despite all of the sort of grim scenarios we're in right now.
And so can you get a little bit further into where like the kernel of an idea comes from? Do you get, for example, a pitch that you actually go like, oh, that's interesting, let me go down that rabbit hole? Or at this point, are you you don't need pitches? And this goes into our inbox conversation in just a second too. But where does those little kernels come from? Or is it just like, I was riding on the subway, I liked this idea, and I was like, oh, I got to do a story about that?
Yeah, it really depends. So I actually used to be a local news reporter for the Star-Ledger, which is the paper in New Jersey. And a big part of that coverage was just constantly talking to as many people as I could at the beginning of the day. And I would call police chiefs and fire chiefs and mayors and just have, normal conversations. And so I have sort of
just talking it up.
Yeah, just chatty Cathy's.
Yeah.
But when everyone's comfortable with you, something that they may throw away at the end of the conversation led to some really good story ideas. And I've tried to kind of approach my beat now in the same way. I have people that I talk to every day just to check in and see how they're doing. And sometimes what they'll say at the end of the conversation turns into a full-blown story idea. And then once that story idea kind of bubbles up, then I'll pitch it to my editor, who oversees a team of us, and I'll go from there.
Do you sometimes find too that, okay, you're chatting and talking and then wrap up and then they just throw in some nonchalant but absolute gem of an idea and you're like, hold on there. Like the last 1 minute of this conversation was worth everything. Does that happen a lot?
Oh, all the time. And it's funny too, talking to media folks, because I think they do tend to be just inherently more gossipy and chatty. So, it's a whole different ballgame if you can get folks with a cocktail in front of them and, they loosen up a little bit.
I can only imagine. Speaking of, okay, so loosening up, does anything ever leak into your inbox that's compelling? And this also goes into how does your inbox look? Is it full of hundreds of pitches a week? How do you organize them?
Yeah, it's kind of interesting to compare before COVID-19 and in the midst of COVID-19. As our perspectives, I think, on everything really changed, it's been sort of sobering to be able to take a step back and say what actually matters right now to readers and what am I interested in as a reporter, because a lot of pitches that PR folks who are sending my inbox just aren't landing. I'm thinking just from a reader's perspective, anything at this point in the stage of the news cycle. And, again, we're kind of week 4, week 5, but I'm still kind of very focused on stories related to the coronavirus. But that's not going to last forever. And I think the appetite among readers isn't going to last forever. And as we kind of move beyond this, I think readers are going to want more positive stories. They're going to want to hear about innovative products that publishers are doing or new experiences that they can have, and more forward thinking too about where this is all going. So it's been kind of a challenge, I guess, in working with those pitches and reading about those pitches, because there's kind of just more seemingly like important stuff out there to talk about than maybe something that I would have thought was interesting before, just because the bar now is different.
Yeah. What are you seeing when you mention it's not hitting the mark? Is it almost like inappropriate? Is it just out of left field?
Yeah, I think that, without naming names, but I think that the PR folks who are conscious of the news cycle and are seeing what I'm writing and taking that kind of extra mile to go through what the bylines look like right now on Adweek and what we are writing about and what's on our mind. The ones that are more thoughtful, the ones that are geared toward things that we're already kind of writing about, are going to land better than the one-off, like we're launching a new stuffed animal that has nothing to do with my beat or what we're covering. And so, yeah, it's and now
that is shocking though to me a bit of like, really? You're still getting stuff like, look at my new stuffed animal hippo launch. Weird.
Yeah, it is. It is kind of weird. And I wonder how, because when this first happened, it really dried up. Like my inbox went from a lot of emails a day to not many a day, because I don't know whether that was just a reflection of shifts in staffing among PR people and what the comms teams look like.
Oh, that's a good point. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but now it seems again we're in a new wave of this as we all kind of accept this as our new normal.
Yeah. So the inbox is getting crazy again.
Yeah, starting to fill back up with useless pitches.
Gotcha. Oh, there you go. So what do you do with all those pitches?
It depends. So the ones that I think are helpful, first off, I try to respond to everyone as much as I possibly can. But I will be the first to admit that I do have to sometimes just let things slide out of my inbox or further down my inbox because it gets just absurd. Mm-hmm. But I also will say, though, that I do really appreciate the emails, particularly from spokespersons within media companies telling me about things that they're going on in the newsroom. Like, even if I can't write a one-off story about it, when I'm taking a broader look at what's going on in the industry, it's great to have examples that I can point to from those emails to just name names and to say, publisher X is doing something that's innovative and this is what that is. But similarly, publisher Y is doing the same thing and that's why that's interesting. So, it's always kind of good to keep a pulse on those things. And PR folks are really helpful in that respect. So even if I try to say all the time, like even if I'm not responding to every single email you send, things are in my inbox and I can draw on them for what I'm doing, those broader stories. Mm-hmm. And like I have different sections within my inbox or different folders. So like if something is related to technology.
Oh, so you do folders.
I do. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I'm also the type of person who cannot stand to have any notifications in my inbox on my phone. So I have to, when I read it, if I don't file it away or respond right away, I'll forget about it. So I have to really stay on top of it.
Yes. Okay. So you're one of those diligent organizers.
Yes.
Some people just let them roll and they tell me they got 20,000 emails unread. I go, oh my God.
The thought gives me so much anxiety.
Right. I think there's like two distinct camps, like the high organized anxiety people and people are like, just let it roll. It's crazy. Awful. Oh man. Well, let's play a little word association game here. I'll say a word, Sarah, and you just tell me the first thing that comes to your mind.
Great.
Sound good? How about food?
Spaghetti.
Oh, that sounds good right now.
Love spaghetti.
Drink.
Water.
Hobby.
Reading.
Ad tech.
Programmatic.
Publishers.
Books.
Paywall.
Subscriptions.
Paid advertising.
Programmatic came to mind again. I feel like I'm giving you horrible answers. I'm so sorry.
That's okay. How about newspaper?
The New York Times.
2020.
Election.
Journalism.
Reporters.
Pitch.
PR.
Okay, that was good. What are you reading right now, Sarah? Or maybe just, previous to the pandemic, currently, anything you're reading? Do you scroll through Twitter? Do you read certain news outlets every day? What are you looking at?
Yeah, so I am, my usual, I guess, media diet would to be get onto Twitter and go through and see what people are reading. And then I read the Times and the Journal websites just to see what the top news of the day is. But since pandemic, I mean, I have tried to keep up with the news as much as possible, but I'm sure like a lot of other people, it's been kind of overwhelming just to, know what's going on and coping with it and then reporting on it.
Yeah.
So I will admit that I have been reading a lot of like really trashy beach reads just so that I can turn my brain off at the end of the night.
But I get it. Well, you got one that you particularly love? Throw it out there.
Well, I haven't started it yet, but I'm going to read the Crazy Rich Asian series.
I hate to tell you, but I've read that. It sucks you in. I hate to say it.
Does it?
It does. But it's something I read a recent article too about talking about fiction and how good that is for your creativity and points of view. And I love that article. And it was from a reputable site somewhere. I want to say Harvard Business Review or something like that. But I felt redeemed a bit because I've long thought, fiction, that's too fluffy, even though there's obviously phenomenal fiction of high regard, not Crazy Rich Asians. But anyway, I love that you're reading that. It'll totally suck you in for sure.
I'm really excited to do that. And also, I mean, I've tried to read all, of course, the nonfiction and the more serious fiction stuff too, but I can't focus. I cannot turn my brain off. So I just really need like a good, solid romance,
Yeah. Hey, I get it. It's good. What do you think the future of journalism looks like?
It's funny because I think about how I would have answered this question 5 weeks ago or like 2 months ago versus now. And it's honestly outside of how devastating this is going to look like for a lot of journalists and a lot of media companies. I mean, it's really kind of sad because I feel like 2020 was a really good year or was going to be a really good year. I mean, a lot of media companies were positioned to be profitable and a lot of companies were hiring and there's a lot of hiring freezes right now. So if advertising and the marketplace and the economy returns as quickly, I guess, as it dried up, I think a lot of media companies are hopeful that that's still going to be the case. And they're still acting that way, which kind of worries me because even if they are planning for Q4 of this year to be really optimistic and great, what's going to happen if that doesn't happen? We have no idea what this timeline looks like for COVID-19 to kind of make its course throughout the US and the world. So, I guess it's a bet that a lot of media companies are still making. And my only hesitation with kind of accepting that as reality is that this timeline is so unknown and so uncertain that I hope we don't see kind of another grim period for media, like come Q4, when this hasn't, when the marketplace hasn't returned as quickly as it dried up,
Would you, if you could rewind, go into journalism again?
Yeah.
When you first started out your career?
Yeah, definitely. I think, the challenges in media are the same a lot of ways that they were before. I mean, no one gets into media for the money.
Yeah.
Certainly you have to ask like really hard questions sometimes and make people uncomfortable. And if you don't have the personality for that, maybe this industry isn't for you. But it is so rewarding. I mean, when you have a good conversation with a source and even understanding a topic to a deeper level and then being able to synthesize that in an article, it's just so rewarding. And I feel especially, I mean, this has been more, it has really stood out and become more apparent in this crisis that we're covering, but you're able just to connect with people on a really genuine, in a genuine way. And when you're having to talk about sensitive topics, just to understand someone and to have a good conversation, I mean, is really meaningful. And so those opportunities exist now in media as they did before and will always. And so I always think that media is a great field to get into, even though it might not be the most profitable, or, you're going to have bad days and you're going to cry in the bathroom or at the lunch table sometimes just because it gets tough. But whatever, you're going to have a good time too. And that's the best part.
Yeah. Oh, that's great. Crying in the bathroom some days. It's okay.
You got to do it.
That's all right.
You read those trashy reads, you cry in the bathroom. It's going to be fine.
It's just, yeah. Okay, now I have a little Mad Lib to finish us off here. Sometimes they're quite accurate, so we'll see what happens with this one. Sometimes they're quite random, but let's see. Okay, first off, what about a scare phrase that you would hear as a journalist?
Like shaking like a leaf?
And then what about a positive buzzword that you hear in journalism?
I guess thoughtful.
Thoughtful, yes. How about an adjective?
Beautiful.
Then part of a pitch.
Okay. How's about body?
Then what about another adjective?
Bright.
And then another part of the pitch.
Salutations.
Okay, do you have a catchphrase?
Yeah, let's do I'm loving it. Would you accept that? The McDonald's?
Oh, yeah. Oh, that's perfect too. You're going to like it. Okay. What about an amount of time?
Infinite.
Oh, perfect. And then another adjective.
Scary.
What about a singular noun?
House.
And then a topic. Any topic.
Ad tech.
Okay. Then a verb that ends in ing.
Raining.
And then last one, just a verb.
Right.
Perfect. Okay. Are you ready? Here we go, Sarah.
Ready.
To me, tech journalism is I'm loving it. It consists of shaking like a leaf and thoughtfulness on the daily. I think that's quite accurate, Sarah, given what you just said about crying in the bathroom. Mm-hmm.
It is.
If a pitch has a beautiful body, I will absolutely respond to it. However, if a pitch has a bright salutation, you can expect no reply from me. If an infinite amount of time goes by and you don't see an email back from me, you can just assume I'm not scared about it. The best stories always have houses and are usually about ad tech. And the best way to reach me is by raining it to me, but you can also write me.
That's
Ta-da!
amazing. That's perfect.
It's so perfect. I love it. Well, Sarah, thank you for hopping on here. Stay safe, stay sane out there. Appreciate you drinking some water with us, not coffee, but just some water with us today.
Thank you.
And people will see you in your inbox, I'm sure.
I'm sure. See you guys there. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Sarah.
Thanks for listening to this week's episode of Coffee with the Journalist featuring Sara Jerde from Adweek. The goal of our show is to give you an in-depth look into the tech industry's most well-known and coveted journalists, and we hope you found today's episode insightful. If you haven't already, make sure to subscribe to our show on iTunes, Spotify, and everywhere else you enjoy listening to podcasts. We'll see you next week with an all-new guest and even more insights. Until then, let's quit bitching about pitching and start great stories.